In this video, we're going to look at the environmental effects on phenotype. Now, remember that phenotype is about the physical appearance in an organism, and we already know that genotype has a big effect. And when we're talking about genotype, we're talking about the makeup of the alleles. So things like having a dominant allele, like a big B, might mean something is brown. So big B, or big B, little b, will make an organism brown, but little b might make the organism black or grey, whatever the other colour is. So we know that genotype can affect the phenotype, but let's have a look at the effect of the environment. So here we have a few different environmental effects on different organisms. So over on the top left, we have some plants. Some have been grown in the light and some have been grown in the dark. And you can see that the phenotype has been affected. So if it's grown in the light, you've got lots of leafy green plants, kind of typical plant look. But if it's been grown in the dark, the plants have different genes activated and they are actually searching for the light, and they're not wasting any resources or energy on making chlorophyll, because chlorophyll wouldn't be any use yet. So the environment that a plant has been grown in is affecting its phenotype. Now the cats, they are actually responding to hot or cold environments. So Siamese cats, when their extremities are exposed to cold climate, like the tips of their ears and the ends of their nose, their fur actually grows a darker colour there. And when the cat is in a warm environment, anywhere where the fur grows will be lighter. So that's why you've got that sort of classic Siamese look in those cats. And bottom left with the flowers, they are showing the effects of either acidic or alkaline soil, giving different flower phenotypes. And over on the right at the bottom, we have two gentlemen who are actually identical twins. But you can see that their environment has changed how their phenotype looks, because they are not identical still, even though their genes are identical. So perhaps here we are looking at the effects of diet, exercise, maybe their job, maybe their lifestyle, changing the way that their phenotype, actually their outward appearance actually looks. But we have another interesting thing to consider when we're thinking about environment, and that is epigenetics. And that is what is happening to our DNA that is being caused by the environment. So we're not actually talking here about changes in the DNA code. That would be mutations. What we're talking about here is chemical changes to the structure of our chromosomes. And in this image, you'll see there are a couple of places where chemical markers are actually added to the chromosome, and that changes gene expression. So we can add chemical markers to the DNA itself. And you can see down the bottom here, we've got DNA methylation. That means adding CH3, which is a methyl group, to the DNA molecule itself, to the actual bases. So we're not changing the base, we're just adding an extra group to them. And it acts a bit like an umbrella over the top. So any molecule like an enzyme trying to read the DNA to see if the gene is ready to be turned on or turned off will not notice the signal, because the DNA methylation is hiding it. So these are chemical markers added to the actual bases themselves. Or sometimes with epigenetics, you can get, let's just undo that. You can get chemical markers added to the histone proteins, and you can see that in this little area here. So the histone proteins, if you remember, are the proteins around which DNA is wrapped. And if you add molecules to the histone proteins, you actually secure the wrapping. So you can't unwrap the DNA, and that means you turn off and make a gene inaccessible, whereas it was accessible without the epigenetic factor added to the histone protein. So what sort of consequences can we expect from this? Well, there are all sorts of things. We might end up with it being a permanent effect or a temporary effect. So perhaps if it was permanent, you might end up passing it on to your children. It might contribute towards disease because it might turn off tumor suppressor genes, or it might turn on the cancer-causing genes called oncogenes. Maybe it affects your metabolism, and maybe it will contribute towards your well-being. And the sorts of things that we think have epigenetic influences can be both positive and negative. So it could be state of mind, social contact, making sure that you look after your gut health with lots of healthy bacteria. They could all have positive epigenetic effects and turn on genes that are important for preventing some diseases or contributing positively to well-being. But there are also things like maybe diseases or toxic chemicals or environmental pollutants or stress that might cause negative epigenetic changes. And actually, we don't know very much about it. So this could be an area where you, as a geneticist, a scientist, may go and do some research and actually help to influence our understanding of how epigenetics contributes to our phenotype, our outward appearance, our well-being, our health, our susceptibility to disease in the future.